everyone. You are listening to the Rachael Maves Podcast, and I'm Rachael Maves, your host. Today, we are speaking with Shoni Johnson. Shoni has been with Connecting Waters Charter School for 19 years, holding a BS in Business Management and a Master's in Curriculum and Instruction Design. She serves as the Curriculum and Accountability Director, overseeing the instructional training, special programs, assessments, and WASC accreditation. Only just a few things there, Shoni. Shoni previously managed urgent care facilities in the Bay Area for 10 years before transitioning into education. Shoni, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm intrigued just listening to your introduction and a little bit about your career trajectory. I mean, this first question is really apropos for you of what is it that drove you to choose a career in education?
Well, okay. To be honest, as you mentioned in my bio, I actually started my career in healthcare administration, and I really did love it. I led a really diverse team, and we always worked together towards a common goal. It was great. A big part of my job there was using data and statistical analysis to help with strategic planning, to figure out how to sustain the business while also meeting patient needs, right? But when my husband and I decided to start a family, I started thinking about a career change, and I'm not going to lie, the first thing I thought of was, how do I get a job where I can have summers off to spend more time with the cats? But I really wanted to be the best mom I could be. So I went back to school to learn more about child development, and I was just instantly hooked. I realized I had a real passion for helping students reach their full potential. And I also saw firsthand how education can just truly change lives. And I just wanted to be a part of that impact. So now in education, I get to use my background in strategic planning and data analysis and curriculum development to create meaningful learning experiences. I love being able to support both students and teachers as an administrator and being able to ensure they have the resources they need to succeed, And honestly, there's nothing more rewarding than seeing a student grow and thrive and knowing that in some small way, the work I do contributed to their success.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you chose the education path initially as a mom like that. And that's so normal, where women are like, what is going to be conducive to being able to raise a family and still have time with my kids and maybe even work at the same school. I was the principal of the school that my daughters went to, and I loved it. It was like the best thing ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had no idea how much I'd really fall in love with it. So it's kind of funny because my husband tells people it's because she wanted her summers off.
Yeah. And then it blossomed into this amazing thing. So tell me a little bit, Shoni, if you don't mind, because you have such an interesting background and you're bringing, having that strong background in data and analysis. How do you feel like it really has helped you drive change within your system?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I really lean on my strategic planning background and data analytics to just drive that instruction. So I just think there's so much value in being really strategic about what we're doing and not just, haphazardly, but really from an administrative point all the way down, like helping teachers because they can get lost in the shuffle, right? And so helping them know what their pathway is and what their plan is for student success. So I really lean on that strategic planning. So we pull in all of our team. We're looking at everything from, the specialists, like for the reading specialist, the math specialist, really talking to people with their expertise and pulling the teachers in as part of that as well. And then looking at the data and looking at the data in different ways and looking at different types of data. To really tell the whole story and make sure that we're not missing anything. So I just think that's really important. So my staff actually gave me this little, just sew onto my jacket. It was like a little patch and it came from the Air Force and it says data. They're like, because they know when I walk into a room, they're like, oh, we're going to be talking about data today. So they know that I'm the data person.
I love that. And truly what a gift to give your staff, because that's not something that every organization has. Like somebody that knows data, is very data literate, and then can help the teachers make meaning of it so that they can apply it and have it drive instruction in their classroom. That's huge.
Yeah. It's really important. I really do think. I think that sometimes people kind of get a glazed look on their face when we start talking about data, but then they light up once they really start understanding what story the data is telling. And I think there's so much joy in that. And they're like, oh, wow. Like, oh, wow, we missed that. We didn't know. So it just it can provide so much insight, everything from, the quantitative to the qualitative, but it can just provide teachers so much insight. And then when they light up, once they see what story the data is telling, then all of a sudden their brains start working and they're like, oh, maybe we should do this and maybe we should do that. And it really enhances the program. And I think without the data, they just kind of get stuck in that rut. And there's no path. They don't really know they're just kind of, I don't know why my students aren't getting better. So
Yeah,
it's so important.
Yeah. And that, I think what you just said is so critical. If they can't see the growth, then there's that loss of like excitement and, oh my gosh, we're moving the needle and we see the kids taking off in a different direction. I mean, that's what drives you every day for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as you think about your system, all the things that are happening in education, the ways in which you and your staff are helping students move forward, what keeps you up at night? What are those things that weigh on you that you wake up or in the shower, you're thinking, oh my word?
Great question. Well, okay, first of all, I don't sleep much, so I have a lot of time to think about things. So are you ready? But seriously, I think more than anything, I just want to make sure that every student is challenged, even if they're struggling. And I mean, I know that I think what really keeps me up at night is making sure that no matter what their background is or their learning environment, they have access to equitable, high quality education, right?
Yeah.
So I always think about whether we're giving enough to support struggling students, but still challenging those who are ready for more, and also making sure that every student is challenged, even if they're struggling, right? So I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but I mean, I believe in both productive struggle and failure. I think both of those, there's value in both of those actions. And I can't stand it when I see students who are struggling and not getting adequate support. But equally, it frustrates me when people assume students can't handle the rigor and just count them out without pinpointing the true cause of their struggle. So it's a fine line and a delicate balance, but it's so very important. And at the same time, I worry about teacher burnout. So meaning, as an administrator, I just want to make sure that we're giving educators the tools and the resources to become successful to navigate all this. I also wonder, I think it's important that we ask, how can we track student progress in a way that actually drives meaningful improvements without piling on more administrative work for teachers, right? Mm-hmm. So, but, at the end of the day, it all just comes down to making sure every student feels supported, engaged, and just truly prepared for life beyond high school or life beyond school. Sorry.
Yeah. So tell school. Tell me a little bit more about that, because we do have people who aren't in the education sector that listen to the podcast. You mentioned being able to track and monitor student progress with not adding in so much burden to those who are holding that space and what that means and looks like, and how do we make this more seamless? Are there ways in which you feel like you've done that within your system? And can you give an example of potentially what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think outsourcing some of that and partnering with, technology, using technology and partnering with companies, that can help us make sense of the data, because it is such a massive amount of data to collect. So using the technology and resources that are out there that can, so that we're not data mining necessarily and spending all of our time doing so much data mining or being kind of haphazard with our data, but actually being more strategic about it and partnering with somebody that can help us kind of do that piece of it is really a first step in helping the teachers, really dig in and see the story and see, are we challenging the students? Are the students growing? Are they struggling? And if they're struggling, what is it they're struggling? What is causing their struggle? Is it the curriculum, or is it something going on at home, or is it some other barrier that we need to also, figure out? So, I think providing them tools, training, resources to help with that data is just so important to really, and again, I'm a data person. So, and from there we build on, well, what resources, what are the next steps? But that first step is we have to get to the bottom of what's really happening here. And then we can build on resources from there. John, and supplemental materials. What else do we need? Do we need help in the home? Do we need counseling? What do we need? What are the tools? What are the barriers?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, on that note, from the things that you've shared that are keeping you up at night, making sure there's equitable access, my paraphrase, kids not falling through the cracks, that everyone's feeling like they're challenged and space to fail. What are 2 ways you feel like that are really practical that you can move forward in that space?
Yeah. Well, I think that I think we need to strengthen targeted support for students and invest in, building teacher capacity. So those kind of are the 2 things that I would go to. I believe it starts with developing better systems to identify student needs early so that we can provide the right interventions, especially like with foundational skills of literacy and math. But I mean, using data and different types of data, multiple measures, right, to track progress and adjust strategies is really key to making sure both the struggling students and the advanced learners are getting the right levels of support and challenge.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to prioritize ongoing professional development for teachers. So that means giving them all of the tools, like I said, meaning, tools, time, training, resources to collaborate and analyze that student data and be able to implement best practices without piling more onto their plates. So I think when we support teachers' well-being and their professional growth, then ultimately we're setting students up for their success.
Yeah, I love that. I love to hear, just because the teacher burnout actually comes up a lot. And it's been in the news often, especially post-pandemic, the weight that teachers are holding and how much more they're taking on and the impact that that's having, and people leaving the classroom and not finding people joining the profession. Are there ways that you guys have started to address that within your system where you're looking at how do we meet that need and provide that support to your teachers?
Yeah, I mean, especially post-pandemic, we really, again, we really started focusing on leaning on the data and trying to dig in. We partnered with Parsec, which really has helped guide us through this process of figuring out and moving beyond just the just moving beyond just the test scores and looking at more quantitative and qualitative data. So like listening to student voices and hearing what they have to say, and I think really being vulnerable too. So listening to the student voices and saying like, maybe what we're doing isn't working. Because I think as educators, we develop programs and then we want to stick with the program. Well, we just haven't given it enough time, or it's got to be perfect. It can't be the program. It's got to be something else. But when we are vulnerable and we collect that, that we hear that student voice and we're collecting that data and the students are saying it's moving too fast, or it's, like we're getting all kinds of feedback about different programs. And it's like, oh, it's really hard to hear that. But we maybe made mistakes. Maybe our pacing was off, or our choices were wrong. So being vulnerable and being able to say, gosh, we really appreciate you telling us that. We didn't really think about that, but you gave us some stuff to really to talk about. And we have to have those hard conversations. And teachers don't want to start over. The first year of teaching is the hardest, right? And they're like, but I've been doing this for 5 years. And we're like, yeah, but for 5 years it's not working. And we got to make this. So it's having those hard conversations and having that growth mindset and being vulnerable. And it really, it's really started with trying to listen to the students and trying to make sure that we're collecting and we're asking the right questions.
Yeah, I will say, Shoni, the work that you're doing in your system of combining that quantitative and qualitative data, I think it's so important. I'm glad you keep highlighting that through the conversation. For myself, I don't feel like that really became apparent to me, the necessity of it, until I started working at the County Office of Education and got that deep training in improvement science. And part of the root cause analysis was doing empathy interviews and focus groups and making us think about how do we slow down our decision making and engage with the students or with families so that we're really understanding the problem before we're putting a solution in place. And I think that we often just stop at the quantitative data, and then we miss this whole piece of the voice, and then we put strategies in place that maybe weren't quite hitting the mark because we didn't just take the time to talk to the kids. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's, I mean, it seems so on the nose, but it was just so eye-opening because I think a lot of our teachers are like, well, we're doing the same thing for all of the students, I mean, we're offering the same, the same access to all the same resources. But when we really dug into really the student voice piece of it and listening to the students, then the teachers are like, I had no idea. I had no idea that those students were going through what they were going through, or didn't have a single book or a single pen or pencil in the home, or that they just came here and they were refugees, or, like all these stories that came up, and how can we better support them, and how can we kind of build programs around them? Really, that personalized learning piece kind of started coming into play. So,
yeah. So for our last question, which is always my favorite, what question in education are we not asking that we really should be?
Great question. So I'm going to say so much of education is focused on traditional academic benchmarks. But the real question I think that we should be asking is, are we truly preparing our students for the world they will enter and not the one that we experienced? So, I mean, we're actually, are we actually equipping students with critical thinking and adaptability, problem-solving skills that they need to thrive in a world that's really changing faster than ever? I mean, are we, also are we teaching them how to navigate complex information? Are we teaching them how to work with people from diverse backgrounds? Are we making sure they can apply what they've learned in real world situations? So just as important, are we making sure all students have access to all of these opportunities, regardless of their circumstances or regardless of their educational setting? I mean, are we providing equitable opportunities for all students to develop those skills? I just worry that if we're not intentional about focusing on real world applications, we're really missing opportunities. And, in some cases, we're closing doors for students before they even have a chance to walk through them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. And I appreciate that you're thinking about it. I think that's one that I think a lot of people are starting to grapple with, especially after the pandemic, this idea of how do we start to think outside of like the traditional ways that we've been doing things, that we've been assessing students, that we've been thinking about education. And you're right. It's the world that we live in. I know every generation says that, but I think even more so this generation, it just does not look anything like what it was when we were in school.
Right. And technology is an amazing thing and can do so much for us, but we also have to get them connected with human beings, right?
Yes.
And making sure that we just have that, mutual respect for diverse backgrounds, and are we really doing a good job with that? I hope that we are, but I think we need to continue to focus on that.
Yeah. Perfect ending. Nice job, Shoni. Thank you for your time today. I just really appreciated our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
A friendly reminder that Parsec Education's early bird sale is live. Get 50% off tickets for the 2026 Measure What We Value Summit happening February 4th through 5th in Fresno, California. Don't miss this limited time offer and the opportunity to experience our incredible MC, Brandon Leake, Season 15 winner of America's Got Talent. Secure your tickets now at parsecsummit.com.